Hello and welcome to another video. If you're anything like me, you probably have a few go-to wood finishes you've always used. I personally like a matte, natural look to my wood projects. So to achieve that, I've personally been using two specific ones for many years now. A Minwax Matte Polycrylic and Bona Sealers and Traffic HD Finish. Minwax Polycrylic can be found at any big box store, while Bona products are most likely found at a hardwood flooring distributor. At least that's where I get them. But both are probably available online if you dig around. But I've always wondered, how good are they at providing me the very basics of protection? Since I build mostly tables, the main protection I look for is the prevention of water spots and staining. For this project, there are 7 wood species, sealed with 3 different products, all of which are subject to 2 separate water tests. The 7 species I found growing at my local big box store were aspen, poplar, mahogany, hickory, maple, red oak, and alder. The actual experiment will be clear at the end, but the first steps were to make the blanks. That effort consisted of a sequence of cutting short pieces, gluing and clamping them together in coaster-sized blanks, squaring those blanks up at the chop saw, gluing and clamping them into a multi-species smorgasbord, employing a thickness planer for a little flattening, joining them at the table saw to clean up the mismatching edges, resawing the boards at the bandsaw to maximize the yield, sanding all the faces and edges, and finally applying the various finishes. Speaking of which, both of the water-based finishes I mentioned earlier have the benefit of a low VOC and a minimal effort to clean up, both attractive traits for my present finishing setup, which often involves commandeering the basement entertainment / kids play area. Ended up doing 3 coats of polycrylic, lightly sanding in between. For the Bona product, it recommends 2 coats of sealer and 1 coat of finish at a minimum. And as a side experiment, I had 2 tints of the Bona Sealer on hand from previous projects. So one of those was a natural seal, the other was Nordic seal. So I split the Bona sample down the middle to get a feel for the differences side by side, just for future reference. The third contender in the finish battle is new to me. It's Odie's oil. I've always wanted to try a natural hard wax or oil product, and I've heard good things about Odie's. For Odie's oil, I applied 2 coats. Technically, this is less than the 3 coats the other products received, but I ended up wanting to see what protection fewer applications provided as a baseline. I didn't have a red scouring pad that the company recommends for the initial buff-in, so that's a caveat in all these results. And to be honest, they're a little bit disappointing, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I will still use their product, and I really appreciate the warm, natural feel and look of the end result, but my expectations for how it will weather the daily use and general wear and tear just are probably tempered back a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 tests these samples were subjected to. The first is ice water, and the second is hot or boiling water. The ice was placed in the drinking cup, and the water was added. Then the cups were allowed to sit on the samples, and any condensation that formed dripped down the side and was left there until it dried. This ended up being about a 24-hour test. Each board was then wiped with a damp rag and inspected. Then it was buffed dry with a cotton towel and inspected. With the Bona product, water rings were visible until the dry buff, then they disappeared altogether. I was very, very satisfied with this performance, to say nothing about the ego boost it gave me in validating my long-standing belief that if it's good enough for a floor, it's more than adequate for a tabletop. The polycrylic was quite bad, I must say. Water rings visible on nearly every species, especially the dark ones, and no amount of wiping or buffing removed them. This product really disappointed. I've frequently used it on end tables before, but I'm going to second guess that as an option now after seeing this. Odie's oil fared slightly better. Rings were definitely present and visible on the darker species, but they did sort of buff out, and it wasn't a total disaster, even with my inability to follow directions and use the proper application techniques. If I applied the product with a scour pad that they recommend, it probably would have had a better result, better penetration of the oils, and better protection overall. Being a new product to me, I feel like I botched that a little bit, and so you can take these results with a grain of sawdust or two. The second test was boiling water. The water was poured into coffee cups to simulate a hot drink such as coffee, tea, or hot chocolate. The cups were then left to cool to room temperature and removed. All three finishes passed this test. No visible marks or staining were noticed. Having some liquid under the cups did cross my mind for this test, but I was a little bit hesitant to drag this experiment out even further. I did allow the polycrylic and Odie's oil another shot at redemption. I added a coat of each product to the samples, and I reran the ice water test for a second time. The cups were placed in a different orientation so they could be distinguished between the first and second tests. Really, the results for these were disappointing again. Still ended up being susceptible to water rings and staining, although it was a slightly less noticeable than the first time. I thought about even extending this further to try another coat on each one, but to be honest, if I have a product that I know I can apply 3 coats to and get all the protection that I need in terms of preventing water stains and water rings, then I don't know. I feel like I'd go with that product every time. I still plan to give Odie's oil another shot, since purchased the proper scour pads, which is just a fine grit 3M scrubby pad. I want to give this a chance to see if it can make it into the top 3 for my personal inventory of wood finishes that I go to when I need a more natural and soft finish. So there you have it. I hope that's informative and useful in your woodworking projects. Most of all, I hope it inspires you to take your favorite finishes and put them to the test. Go waterboard your finishes until they can't help but reveal their true identity. Anyway, thanks for watching.